Hello everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us for today's TCF V2.0 in practice webinar for publishers. I am Ninon Wagner, Privacy and Compliance Manager at IAB Europe. I hope everyone can hear me fine. So as many of you know, IAB Europe, in a partnership with IAB Tech Lab, announced in August last year the launch of the second iteration of Transparency and Consent Framework, or TCF V2.0. And so this webinar is the third and final in a series that is dedicated to publishers looking to successfully switch over to TCF V2.0 before August 15, which is the cutoff date of the technical support for the V1.1. The recording of the first two webinars are available on IAB Europe website for those who are interested. So like TCF V1, TCF V2 uses standardization to continue supporting GDPR and privacy compliance, management of users' transparency and consent on digital properties, and to enhance industry collaboration and interoperability. TCF V2 is a better and improved tool in many ways, as it takes much better account of publishers' needs, as well as the evolving legal requirements and expectations from regulators. And over the last year, vendors and CMPs that implemented TCF V1 have been working hard to implement the new technical specifications and policy requirements. And there are now over 450 vendors who registered to the V2 and nearly 50 consent management providers who are certified for TCF V2.0. So again, this background, today's webinar is dedicated to providing real-life examples of validated TCF V2 CMPs that can hopefully help publishers looking to start or to fine-tune their switch over to the V2 before August 15. To do this, we've invited several speakers from organizations that operate 3 prominent CMPs on the market, including Thomas Lé, product engineer at Sirdata, Andrea Gianangelo, head of product at Iubenda, and Michael Cross, VP of Product at Sourcepoint. Thank you so much for joining us today. This session is recorded and there will be 20 minutes Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, technical or policy related, please enter them in the question box, which can be found at the bottom of the tool. We will go through them at the end of the session. And so before we leave the floor to our 3 speakers, I'll first hand over to my colleague, Patrick, who is our technical director here at IAB Europe, for a brief overview of our CMP compliance and enforcement program.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ninon. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of our CMP compliance program here at IAB Europe. Next slide, please. So let's start by looking at when the compliance program kicked off. So for TCF version 1, we launched the program just over a year ago now, in June 2019. To do this, IAB Europe developed a tool called the CMP Validator, which is a browser extension, and that allows us to go to any website and test the TCF implementation for the CMP on that website. So using this process, we validated 134 CMPs against TCF version 1. Now, as part of the program, we also did proactive review of top sites by traffic in key markets to make sure that those top sites were not showing breaches of the TCF policies. And so to identify those top sites, we use resources such as Alexa and SimilarWeb to determine the top sites by traffic. In doing that early this year, we did actually find some CMPs where there were breaches of the version 1 policies, and as a result of that, we issued some suspension warnings to those CMPs. Typically, we would give a CMP 14 days to fix an issue, and providing issues are resolved in that period, there's no further action. However, it's worth pointing out that under version 1, there was no limit to the number of suspension warnings. So as long as the issues were dealt with, there would be no further penalties, although this has actually changed in TCF version 2, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. Okay, so let's move on and have a look at the compliance program for TCF version 2. So we've been very busy certifying CMPs for version 2, and In fact, we have more than the 30 mentioned there at the moment. So we've validated almost 50 CMPs. Of those, most of them are commercial CMPs. So I think 42 are commercial CMPs. And we have a handful of private CMPs, 5 or 6. And plenty of the commercial CMPs are also offering mobile compliant CMPs. There's about 13 offerings for mobile. Now, as part of the program for TCF version 2, as in version 1, we will continue to monitor the top sites by traffic. And this work will continue in earnest once TCF version 1 has been deprecated on August 15th. So post August 15th, we will start doing the monitoring of the top sites for any potential breaches of TCF version 2. And so looking at the market today, obviously we have less than 1 month until TCF version 1 is deprecated, but we're seeing plenty of early adopters of version 2 CMPs, which is very exciting. So, we're really looking forward to seeing more of those. Now, having said that, it's worth pointing out that we've already identified some non-compliant instances of version 2 CMPs, which is a bit of concern because those CMPs have just been through the compliance process, okay? And this is concerning because really it does undermine the TCF and it exposes all parties in the supply chain to legal risk. So what we've done with version 2, we've revised the enforcement process. So CMPs now have a limit of 3 suspension warnings within a 12-month period. If there's a 4th warning, then that will cause immediate suspension of the CMP for a minimum of 14 days. And of course, that would impact all of the CMP's customers, including all the publishers that actually deploy their CMP. So we're hoping this will be a deterrent for breaches. Now, from a publisher perspective, in this respect, it's really important to implement the correct approved initial layer requirements that the CMPs have, that they present. So each CMP will have standard text that has been certified by IAB Europe, and it's really important that publishers use that because ultimately that text is derived from the GDPR. The TCF policies are derived from the GDPR. So if you try and change that text, not only could you be causing issues for yourself in terms of breaches of GDPR, but you could also be causing problems for your CMP if they're in breach and they get a suspension warning as a result. So really important that you adhere to those standard requirements. Okay, and that's all I want to say for now. Hopefully that gives you an overview of the compliance program. And what I'll do now, I'll hand over to Thomas Lay at Sirdata. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we can.
Do you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. My name is Thomas. I'm product engineer at Sirdata. Today, I'm going to present you the new version of our CMP product and how we are managing to help publishers to successfully make the transition from TCF V1 to V2. Before talking about the transition, I just want to give you a quick history of what brought us to develop our own CMP. First, as a data provider, we collect and process data on publishers' websites. So, of course, we need consent for our activity. On the other hand, our publishers and partners needed help to comply, so we wanted to provide them with a solution. From that point, we decided to develop Sirdata CMP based on the IAB Transparency and Consent Framework, which allows us to ensure a full and reactive support on the product, but more importantly, to make sure that consent is valid, as of course we depend on it. Since then, we support the TCF and we contribute to its evolution and adoption in the industry. Now, back to the transition from TCF V1 to V2. The first thing to keep in mind is that we wanted to simplify the whole process for everyone. As you may already know, the TCF V2 brings many new features like the support for legitimate interest, the publisher restrictions, the stacks, which is great because it provides more granularity and more control for both publishers and users. But it also brings more complexity and difficulties for users to understand the information we provide to them. So when developing the new version of our CMP product, we focused on two main aspects. The first one is publishers, because we know that at some point, publishers struggle to deal with the CMP. So we wanted to make it very easy for them to integrate the solution. Basically, you will be able to configure the CMP in your interface in just a few minutes and just copy paste a very short tag on your website to integrate it. Of course, you will have access to all the new features the TCF V2 came out with, but we wanted to keep it very simple for you. The second aspect we focused on when developing our new version is users, because even if GDPR gives users more control regarding their personal data, not everyone fully understands the information we provide to them. So we worked to build a very compact and user-friendly interface for users so they can get easily access to the information and make their choices well-informed. Now, let me show you what our new version looks like with some examples. As you can see, the notice is very compact and easy to read for the users. The user can click on the Accept All button. And if he clicks on the Set Choices button, he has access to all the details and explanations about the treatments. He can review the details for each purpose. Including the legal basis and the vendors working on each purpose. And in this new version, we've introduced a new 3-stage toggle system, allowing the user to make his choices individually per purpose and per legal basis, or globally. Of course, you can do the same for the vendors. You can review the details for each vendor with the legal basis, purposes, and features, and make his choices as well. Here you have another example of integration with a different customization. The CMP supports many languages with automatic detection. So if I change my browser language, for instance, to French, the notice is now. You can also enable a dark mode. So if I go to my settings and switch to dark mode, the CMP automatically switches to dark mode. Now, we know that publishers have concerns about economic issues with the transition. So we work to make it very smooth in order to prevent them from any drops of revenue during the transition. So basically, when you will switch to our new version, the CMP will be able to read the V1 strings and transmit the signals. And in the meantime, the V2 UI will be surfaced to the users so they can make their choices. That way, it will ensure the continuity on your website, as the existing consent can be used while asking for your users to update their choices. In addition, we are supporting Google Consent, including their AC mode. So you will be able to continue to work with Google and its partners before and after they join the global vendor list. And finally, we are providing a personalized support. So be sure that our team will be by your side to ensure you a successful launch of the V2 on your website. But now the transition is just a step. But if you want to keep that very easy experience for publishers and keep supporting them in their compliance process, we really need to provide them with a complete solution. And to do that, we first focus the product on the compliance. It's that simple. The product evolves following regulations and authorities' decisions, so it will always be updated and compliant with no effort needed from publishers. In addition, we are part of the TCF community, including the IAB Tech Lab, so we contribute to the evolution of the framework and, of course, integrate the new features into our product. And finally, while we are providing a customization system for you to nicely integrate the solution on your website, we are making sure that whatever you configure in your interface, you will be very confident that you will comply with the GDPR requirements and the TCF policies. We're also taking care of your audience. So once you're all set with your CMP configuration, it's suitable for all devices from mobile like iPhone 5 to desktop. It's available in many languages, 14 so far. We also have a support for Google AMP. And in this new version, we've put real effort into accessibility features like screen readers capabilities, because of course it's important that we provide transparency and control to everyone, including disabled people. To go further, we also have a support for the Californian regulation CCPA. We've included new features into the product, like our contextual API, which will allow you to get incremental revenues thanks to our contextual monetization service. And as usual, it comes with the support and our strong expertise in privacy. To sum up, with this new version of Sirdata CMP, we work to provide a very user-friendly and accessible interface for all users, but also an easy to integrate solution for publishers without forgetting their economic issues, as we thought it all to prevent them from any drops of revenues during the transition. We are supporting Google Consent from now, and we are focusing our energy to support publishers in their compliance process with both our product and expertise. And cherry on the cake, despite all the work, all the new features and challenges we've put into that project, we are very happy to be able to maintain our free version. So the transition is on. We are ready. We've already started to deploy our new version on publishers' websites. So if you have any question, feel free to contact us. We'll be very happy to present you the solution and help you to make the transition to TCF V2. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Andrea from Iubenda. Just a second to share my screen. Thank you. So my name is Andrea. I'm a head of product at Iubenda. I'm also a contributor to Tech Lab, which is the technical arm of IAB, which writes actually specifications for TCF and also for the US privacy framework. At Iubenda, we have over 60,000 clients in more than 100 countries to whom we provide compliance solutions in general, whether it's CMP or privacy policy or terms and conditions, with a 360 approach, 360 degrees approach to compliance. And specifically, we have a product for generating and keeping up to date privacy policies and T's and C's. And this is particularly important today now, for instance, with the Privacy Shield invalidation, which you may have heard about. All companies that transfer data to the US or vice versa from Europe will have to update their privacy policy and check what their vendors are doing, even outside of the advertising space. And we make this one-click process once you host your privacy policy with us and generate it with us. We also have a cookie content management solution, which is what I'm gonna mostly go through today. And we have an API to store proof of consent, because according to the GDPR, it's not enough that you collect consent in a lawful way. You also need to store proof that you've acquired consent, whether the context is advertising and cookies, or it could also be email consent or sign up consent or consent to even collect it offline. Also, we have a solution for compiling a registry of data processing, which again is mandatory according to the GDPR in many scenarios. And all this is, of course, compliant with not just the GDPR, but also CCPA, LGPD, and all of the various other legislations, including the Australian legislation and all of the lesser known legislations that are out there. But let's get to our CMP, which is called the Iubenda cookie solution. These are the key features. The first one is that it's extremely easy to configure and yet extremely powerful. And I'll give you some demonstration on that. It's got a lot of integration options. We have CMS plugins from WordPress to Magento, etc. We even have a web server module for all of the main web servers. So if you have legacy pages that are from the early 2000s, like some clients have, which are on completely legacy systems, but still you need to achieve compliance for those, you have solutions, because this system basically parses all of the pages and injects the necessary code for making them compliant to the e-privacy directive and the GDPR. We also have a native mobile SDK, and also full MP support with both the TCF and also transitioning that consent with your non-MP pages, which is a challenge with the MP. We also built to maximize ad revenue. We work with both vendors and publishers to make sure that we help them get the most out of user consent, both in terms of collecting as many consents as possible, and in terms of making sure that vendors can use that consent in a timely and effective manner. And all of the RTB chain works in an optimized manner. And this is just an idea of how how our CMP works. You can access to the configurator that allows you to make it yours in terms of style. And in this demo, I tried to customize it according to the IB style, IB Europe style. And you can change the colors, and the UI is really made with care. And this also reflects in our tests into actual better consent rate. As you can see, you can customize the color of the first layer and also the logo. This is not yet with TCF enabled, which is coming. So that's why the first layer is kind of short. You can also change the position and even use an overlay if you want. In some cases, there's actually provides better consent rate, if that's something that you want to do. Also, this is available in multiple languages, and it's also optimized for mobile web, as well as, of course, we have the native SDK. Then you can enable the TCF, and we support all the features of TCF, including restricting both vendors and purposes. So if you want to only work with a limited set of vendors, or only, for instance, not allow legitimate interest, you have all the options, and yeah, they are available through this configurator, so very easy to access. And finally, when you go to the second layer, you get it customized to your branding, and the interface looks very nice, very well organized. And we're also launching the Google additional consent mode in a few days. So we'll be ready for when Google rolls out, which is going to be like 2 weeks or so, to also support all of the vendors in Google that have not yet switched to the V2. With this thing that's called additional consent mode. When it comes to advertising, we know from everyone, from vendors and the publishers that we work with, that speed equals revenue. That's why we spend a lot of time optimizing our CMP for speed, and we serve the CMP API in as little as 3 milliseconds with a mixture of collaborating with Akamai, which is our CDN, and also efforts from our engineering team, again, working always with vendors and publishers. And we have tangible results in terms of the fact that this it provides returns on both viewability and ad revenue directly. So you are able to access to more inventory and optimize the revenue by being extremely fast at the CMP level, okay? And consider that the average CMP is, sometimes replies over 1 second, okay? So 1,000 milliseconds. We have all sorts of solutions to stretch it down to the minimum. And this actually returns. And I can give you a couple cases. One is specific, and it's snopes.com. That increased their viewability by 70% by switching to our CMP, the Iubenda solution, and also introducing lazy loading for ads through Zeus, which is the solution for lazy loading of ads. And on average, we see that publishers that optimize the speed of the CMP API get a 10% improvement in ad revenue. And we've seen also that vendors have started to notice and are paying more and more attention in not just bringing their merchants to the publishers to the TCF, but making sure that the TCF implementation is performant, because otherwise they will not get the consent in time, and they will have to default to non-personalized ads. I don't have a stat for V2, but for V1, on average, vendors wait 200 to 300 milliseconds before giving up and just serving non-personalized ads. So it's very important. And also, of course, there is consent. Our large publishers, so we're not talking about edge cases, the tiny website, our very large publishers, we're talking about hundreds of millions of page views per month minimum, get over 95% consent rate, with some of them even reaching 98% with some configurations. Okay, so it's I mean, really good results. Of course, if you want to give it a try, you can head over to iubenda.com, or you can also reach out to me personally at andrea@iubenda.com. And that will be it for today. Anything else, if you have questions specifically, there will be a Q&A at the end, so you can address me directly if you want. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Just give me a moment while I share my screen. Hi, I'm Michael Kraus. I'm the VP of Product at Sourcepoint. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Michael.
Great. Okay. So a little bit Sourcepoint. Sourcepoint has been around since 2015, one of the first CMPs registered with the IAB for GDPR compliance. And our mission is really about providing choice to consumers and be able to enable transparency in the digital marketing ecosystem. So that's really where we started, and it's in our DNA. So I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that you might run into with your TCF V2 transitions. And this is our learnings from having people already cutting over to TCF V2. One of the things that's really important is to make sure that your legal and commercial teams are on the same page. Really, it's not about setting up the CMP. Setting up the CMP is relatively easy once you've decided what to do. And it's getting your legal and commercial teams on the same page. And you also want to make sure that in addition to these other items, you allow time for testing, because you want to make sure that what you're presenting to your consumers is really the brand message that you want, a compliant message that you want, and you want to be able to choose tools that are scalable, that will allow you to have consistent messaging and compliance across all of your different properties. So some of the things that you're going to have to take into consideration are, there are a lot of new things in TCF V2, and a lot of them are very favorable for the publisher. So there's going to be new consent signals, and there's new choices for consumers to be able to object to legitimate interest legal basis processing. But for the publishers, there's also restrictions that they can now place on vendors, and you want to be able to decide which legal bases and which processing purposes that you're going to want to allow on your sites. Ultimately, it's your relationship with the end user that's important, and so you have to be able to make those decisions, and Sourcepoint can help you implement those choices. Another thing that we've noticed that people might not be aware of is that there are going to be new endpoints, and usually publishers don't really have to do anything for TCF V2. You know, the vendors are the ones who are doing the work to look in the right place for the information on consent. But if you're using certain things like fast tags or prebid.js, or you're using vendors that are not on the IAB framework, then there's going to potentially be code updates that you have to make. And also, if you, as a publisher, leverage the TC data information directly, this is something to plan into your implementations. And because there's so much new information, we've been advising our customers to reevaluate their user experience. You're going to recreate a first layer message. There's going to be a new privacy manager if you're using that two-layer approach to support that finer grain control for consumers. That means more information to disclose, and one of the things that you can leverage is stacks, and we have a stack tool that helps you pick out the appropriate stacks for the vendors that you're using. And ultimately, you're speaking in your brand's voice and using your brand's identity. And remember, this is your audience. So make sure your messaging is consistent with compliance, but also an extension of your brand. One of the things that we try to help publishers with is scale across all of their different properties. We're usually working with larger publishers. You know, part of this is setting up the compliance. You know, and we have a privacy check that people can use before they ever launch their campaign to make sure that they're creating a compliant experience. So you can run a privacy check and make sure your first layer message is correct and complies with the TCF V2 policies. But you can also customize templates that you might use across your properties. So we can have templates in various languages with different presentations of the appropriate text, with all the appropriate calls to action that you will need for compliance. And we can provide templates to you, or you can build them yourself based on the compliant templates that we provide. So like many of the others, our presentation is fully customizable. You can put your own logo, use your brand colors, your fonts, all of that is configurable, as well as the placement. So that can help you ensure sufficient support across all your properties and allow you to still have everything in the brands of the properties that you're communicating to your consumers with. We give you a team of very seasoned people to help you manage your transition. And that support goes deep into the organization up to the executive level. So we have account managers and solutions consultants to help you manage your transition and help you with the project management. We have the support in additional layers and all the way up to the C-level. So a couple of quick things about the UI. You want to make sure that you have a presentation of that first layer message that covers more than a significant portion of the screen. In order to minimize the amount of data, you can use the stacks, and we also allow you to use custom stacks and make sure any special features that you're using are disclosed. You have the appropriate calls to action. There's different ways that you can present this information. I'm showing you one way. There's more compact ways to show this also. It all depends on what template that you want to select and how much information you want to put in the first layer message. So you can have it set up like this, where you show stacks and can expand the descriptions of the stacks and give the ability for people to drill down easily into the information. And you can set up your calls to action however you want, assuming that they're all the appropriate equal weight. So these will take you to your vendors or your purposes. You can show your consumers the processing basis that the vendors are using, whether you're using consent or legitimate interest. We separate out custom purposes from the IAB purposes visually in the UI. All that happens automatically for you, and there's nothing you need to worry about with those things. So this is a way that you can set up your compliance not only for the IUB, TCF, and the e-privacy, but if there are things that you want to do for your own purposes, those can also be configured in our platform. So then I just want to briefly talk about some of the lessons that we've learned as we've moved people over to TCF V2. You want to make sure that the people in your teams have all the information they need to build compliant experience. So safeguards like privacy check help to ensure compliance in real time. And if you have a lot of different properties and you're operating in a lot of different geographical areas, you want to make sure that you have some flexibility, because a one-size-fits-all solution will ultimately hit snags. We support global deployments with campaigns targeted geographically, so you customize what actually gets shown to the user depending on which geographic location they're in, what device they're using, and all of those options. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention and participation, and look forward to answering your questions.
Can everyone hear me? So we'll start the Q&A now. We don't have that much questions, so please do not hesitate to ask any question you may have before we end the session. So the first one is 3 questions actually. CMPs provide TCF 2.0 in AMP. Despite the AMP restriction, are there any live example publishers site that already use TCF 2.0 with AMP? So maybe one of our speakers can answer this about AMP.
I mean, I can if you want. We spent quite a lot of time trying to make AMP fit to the TCF needs up until I think it was April. It was not compatible with the TCF at all. It was in theory, but the string size that you could save was too short, and it will cut the TC string and basically invalidate it. So it was impossible to use. So with the help of a few CMPs and also Patrick Verdon here, the AMP team made some modifications that now make AMP compatible with TCF, both V1 and V2, okay? In our case, yeah, I mean, we didn't use the official implementation of AMP because it was just not, I mean, for us, it was not, it didn't fit the needs because it was very hard to, it had too many limitations basically. But we found a way to implement it, and I mean, I don't know if I can share my screen. I can, since the question wanted a live, I can just show it quick. Yeah, this is just a test website, and this is an AMP page. It's running our CMP. This is all default configuration. And as you can see, it's quite seamless. We are forced to gray out the back, but that's the only compromise. And then when you hit accept, the vendors on the page will get the signal. Also, there is the full TCF interface here, and V2 is enabled here, so everything works normally. And also, this consent will transition from AMP pages to non-AMP pages, and that's how us at Iubenda have implemented it, at least. And by the way, we have a guide. So if you Googled Iubenda AMP, you can see how we've implemented that. And I mean, you can just take a look and see if it fits you.
Yeah, hi, and this is Michael Krause from Sourcepoint. I would say that you know, as Andrea mentioned, there are challenges with AMP because of the way that it's basically a walled garden. However, we have put a lot of work into supporting AMP as a CMP. And it's not been without its technical hiccups, but we've worked through a lot of those already, and I believe we do have some live examples. And you could reach out to our account management team to see those.
Thank you. And the other question was, is it compliant not to show the purposes and features in the first layer and just to present text and accept button plus setting C choices? So maybe I can answer this one. You have to present users with the purposes and the special features you're using, or at least the stack names on the first layer. However, it is not mandatory to offer granular choices from the first layer. And the third question was, do you have some website examples who are already live with the TCF 2.0 and 100% compliant? So maybe Thomas, Michael, Andrea, you might have some answer there.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, our first publisher, we launched the integration in April, and our first large publishers have switched a month and a half ago, more or less. So we have plenty of them that are live. Even the website that I was showing before is a test website, but it's live. Anyways, at this point, there are plenty of clients that have implemented it. So.
Yeah, I would say we also have several customers live and have been, working to transition all of our customers to TCF V2 by the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, we've also already started to deploy our new version in some publishers, but I don't have any example for now. So you have to reach our account management team to have an example. And to get back to the AMP, the AMP support, we are working with the Google team to make the framework evolving in order to make the TCF and AMP compatible together to deploy the new version.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Jen is how is TCF 2.0 being supported for connected TV, and what guidance is given to publishers? TCF 2.0 can be supported for connected TV or any non-web platform. Maybe I let Patrick answer this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Nino. So you're absolutely right. It's possible to have a fully compliant solution on connected TV platforms. It's probably worth noting at this point that the policies do not distinguish between platforms. So there's no distinction between desktop and mobile and connected TV. So whereas there are libraries available for desktop, for instance, there are not for CTV. So it's more of a challenge to implement on that platform. And we've seen different players adopt different solutions, but it's certainly possible to implement a fully TCF version 2 compliant CTV solution.
Yeah, and I would say one of the interesting things for connected TV that you have to take into consideration is the user interface, because typically people are navigating with a 4-button remote. Sourcepoint is working on connected TV experiences that are TCF V2 compliant with several large publishers right now. And keeping in mind those restrictions or constraints with the user interface that the consumer is going to have is one of the key items to take into consideration.
Thank you. So we have also some other question coming. So when will Google join the TCF? Google is already registered as a vendor. Their ID is 755, and their ramp up to TCF V2 should start on July 30th. In the meantime, publisher can beta test the additional consent mode with our CMP to ensure a smooth transition. Andrea, Michael, and Thomas, do you have you started to do some beta test?
Yes, actually, Sourcepoint engineers contributed to the IAB libraries, in fact, to help enable the additional consent methods in the TC data objects and in-app TC data objects. So yeah, we're actually about to release today functionality for the beta test with several of our publishers.
Yeah, same for us. We're about to release the support for the additional consent mode for Google. I know from publishers anyway that Google is starting a beta test of the TCF. I mean, it's starting to communicate with publisher about the transition. So I think it's imminent that they will switch maybe even earlier than the 13th.
Great.
For us, it's already available. The XML is already available, and we are preparing the switch to the GVL for Google. And we've also included the AC mod into our AMP version, as the AMP team have released the features. So we are following the subject very close with Google.
Okay, thank you. A question coming that might be addressed to Patrick, I think, then is, could you please clarify what will happen at the end of August? So I think might be August 15, more likely.
Yeah, absolutely. So what will happen on, well, August 16th, because 15th is the deprecation date, is that all of the resources that the CMPs use, so that includes the global vendor list, the archives of the global vendor list, they will all be removed, literally. And so any requests by a CMP to those resources will result in a 404 error. The CMPs will simply not be able to retrieve the resources. So that will happen on the 16th of August.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, there is also another question is, as a publisher using the TCF, can I still work with vendors not using the TCF? So the answer is yes, from a policy point of view, but maybe one of our speakers can explain how they integrate that with our CMPs.
Yeah, I can take that. So at Sourcepoint, we have a variety of different ways that you can integrate what we call custom vendors into your CMP. Of course, the custom vendors are going to be visually separated from the IAB vendors, as is required by the IAB TCF V2 policies. And the integration can happen either through managing different cookies, or through custom JavaScript calls, or inline. So there's a variety of different ways that we can help people integrate with vendors that are not on the TCF V2. But I would say that it's certainly easier to work with vendors who have adopted the standard.
I mean, on the Iubenda side, I can say that TCF is just a little slice of the privacy compliance issue, and we manage cookies regardless of whether it's TCF or outside of TCF, and we have all system of purposes outside of TCF, and we also provide privacy compliance outside of the cookie space.
And maybe one last question is about for a publisher who is looking to install a third-party CMP, how long will the process typically take?
That depends. So if it's just switching from V1 to V2, it's probably very easy. We had, for instance, a very large publisher, hundreds of millions of page views per month, switching in 5 weeks. I mean, consider that this is a very large company, so the technical switch was pretty effortless. I mean, we try to make that easy at least. But that gives you an idea. Anyways, it depends if you have complexities outside of the TCF and how you can manage those complexities. If you have a tag manager already that handles non-TCF vendors, if you know how diverse your infrastructure is, if you have a mobile app too. So it depends, I would say, but it can be quick.
Yeah, I would say the limiting factor is not typically, at least for us, the CMP. It's typically the organizing the efforts on the publisher side with the legal and commercial teams. I would say it can be as fast as you want it to be, and typically it's not, it's not us that is the long pole in the process.
And for us, as I told before, we are doing our best to support publishers in the transition. So typically we've migrated all the V1 configuration to the V2 configuration for all our publishers based on their needs, and we are currently sending them the new tag to just copy paste on their website. So basically, it's very easy for them.
Thank you. A question I think for Patrick is, can any publisher have access to the CMP validator?
Yes, absolutely. So all CMPs have access to the validator, and that also includes any publisher running a TCF CMP is also able to access the validator. If you want to use it to double check your compliance, then you can email us at tcf.compliance@iubeurope.eu. And I think the details are up there on the screen.
Yeah, great, thank you. So I think that it should be the end of our session. Thank you so much to our speaker for their presentation today. I hope it was helpful for the people who joined us today. And for any publisher looking to switch over to the V2 before the deadline of August 15, dedicated material is available on the IAB Europe website, such as a recording of the previous webinars, FAQs, and articles to help you in your implementation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.